Hey everyone, welcome back to OnBase. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today I'm very excited to talk to Kelly Flowers on building predictability with systems thinking. Kelly, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we were talking before we hit record. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey with everyone and what's led you to what you're doing today.
Yeah. I think like a lot of people in sales, I never really thought I'd be here. I went to school for global studies, international business, definitely thought I would be a diplomat, traveling the world. And right after college, I did some of that, was never a diplomat, but I did travel a ton for work and it was amazing. And I was working for a nonprofit and I realized I think I need to make a little bit more money. And so I found my way into sales via higher education, but for-profit higher education, which is basically sales without a quota because it's illegal to have a quota when you're in education. But man, I learned everything there about discovery, progressing deals, which was really just progressing conversations with students. And I was living in the Bay Area at the time, and it was obvious I had to get into tech. So I actually had been a manager for a few years. And when I went to get into tech, no one would hire me as a manager. They were like, you've never been in tech. You've never been an SDR. Basically, you don't know what you're doing. So I swallowed my ego and my pride. And I said, that's all right. I'm going to start over. So I became an SDR at like 28, which is ancient for SDRs. At least it was then. And it was amazing. I was an SDR at Wiseline, which at the time was a very different company than it is today. When we were cold calling, we were like spelling the name of the company on the phone. It was pretty brutal. But eventually I ended up managing that team in San Francisco. And then we also had a ton of our engineering team in Guadalajara. And for those who don't know, Guadalajara is the Silicon Valley of Mexico. And I'd already lived in Mexico in 2007 to 2008. And so I was dying to get back. And they said, hey, do you want to run a sales team there? I said, absolutely. Please send me. Somehow convinced my husband to quit his job. And we moved to Mexico with our cat. This was like pre-house, pre-kids, so easy to move your life around, right? And we did that. It was amazing. Built out this sales team. He had this nice plush job. He was researching new international offices for us. And it was great. And that was kind of how I got my start. And then I came back to the States and had the opportunity to go to New Relic, which was career changing for me. I started in sales dev there. And then I actually moved all the way to bottom of funnel and started running the enterprise renewals business. And then Databricks reached out. What a ride that was. It was incredible. Worked with so many smart people there. And then I had the opportunity to go to 1Password and run the whole thing. And I thought, okay, I think I'm ready for this. And that's how I got into tech. That's how I got into sales dev. The reason I stay in sales dev is it changed my life and it changed my family's lives. And it has given me so much opportunity. Never could have even imagined. And I just love it. And it's one of those things where sales development is an incredible place to start your career because it's a launching pad. You can go in so many places and go to market outside of GTM. The skills you gain here are just so transferable. So that's kind of my story. I mean, outside of that, California native through and through, far Northern California, if we have any of those listeners out here. And then we moved to Denver about 2 years ago. I have 3 girls, 6'4" and almost 2. And it's a little bit of a chaotic household, but organized chaos.
I love that. I love so many things about it. I mean, we were sharing this earlier. I have 4 kids. You have 3 kids. Very busy households,
Yes.
especially in December, which is extremely busy. The diplomat comment, that is pretty amazing because so much of sales is meeting folks in the middle and helping understand their pain and their challenge. And you've been throughout the entire funnel. I feel like that's the perfect setup.
Yes, that is so accurate. And when you are traveling for work, especially globally, and you're traveling internationally, I was going to Thailand and meeting with companies, and I worked for a J1 visa program. So we brought students over for 4 months, and you're talking about very big cultural differences. And so you're showing up for this work meeting, and I'm American, so I show up in my probably at that point I was probably wearing Forever 21 professional clothes, but high heels and pantyhose, and then you come in and you have to take off your shoes, and it's a whole different approach. And it was the same thing working in Mexico. The way that we get work done as Americans is so different from any other culture. And so having that international background, I actually think has really helped me in sales. Just listen, try to understand the point of view, and what are the things I'm not picking up on, and how can I be more in tune with what the customer needs?
Awesome. Sweet. Well, let's dive in. I know that you are a big advocate of system-based strategy. For those who don't understand, we'll probably need to start with a little groundwork, but your premise is that a systems-based strategy is essential for achieving more predictable outcomes than traditional goal setting. I'd love for you to tee us up and get us started.
Okay. I feel like I need to roll up my sleeves for this one. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an and. To have a system that supports goal setting is really how you build a strong foundation, in my opinion. And to break it down to the bare bones, if you're a rep and you think, all right, I have to hit 500K in pipeline every month, I have to hit 10 stage twos, just having that target, that's a goal. And maybe you win that goal once, I don't know, out of every couple months, right? Goals are really for just achieving. Systems-based thinking is for achieving consistently, basically, is how I think about it. And so the example I always go back to is actually when I was an SDR at Wiseline. I think we were getting targeted and paid out on like meetings set. So we were trying to determine product market fit. It wasn't even qualified meetings at this point. And my VP of sales sat down and asked me, like, how are you getting to your number? And I had no answer, Chris. It was like, basically, I don't know, hope. My fingers are crossed. And at this point, we were living in Oakland, me and my husband, and we'd walk to BART every day, and he'd say, how many meetings do you need to get today? And I'd say 4. And that was the goal. There was no system. And so his name was Trenton Truitt. He had a massive impact on me and my career. And he actually sat me down and explained, here's how you build a system to figure it out. And I continue to teach this system to every SDR and every manager I work with. And it's really simple. It's just, how many selling days do you have this month? Minus the days you're not going to be here. And you kind of reverse engineer into your number. That's a really easy example of systems-based thinking versus I need to get 10 meetings per month. If you're just getting that 10 meetings, you're not thinking of all of the different elements that could throw you off. December is a great example. Most people are working 14 days this month, and there are usually 21 days in a month, right? You got to figure out how the heck are you going to hit your quota in 14 days. That's system-based thinking. And you can apply that as an IC, and you can also apply that all the way up to the top. If you are in the C-suite, if you are setting OKRs, all of that is system-based thinking.
That's awesome. I love that. I think chunking it or breaking it down into smaller chunks is such a smart approach too, because many do see, even corporate bro did a video this week where it was, got a $50,000 deal, but my quota's $1 million, right? If you break it down, folks say, I want to make 6 figures, $100,000 a year is daunting when you're starting in your career. But then if you look, hey, if we work 8 hours a day, $34 an hour, roughly, you start to chunk it down. What are a few specific systems or that you recommend for sales that may replace some of the traditional goal setting?
Yeah. So I'm going to go like low and I'm going to go high for a few examples here. Pipeline generation is one. I think about pipeline generation all day, every day. So do my managers, so do my directors, so do my ICs. And what I love about systems-based thinking is it works at every single level. So pipeline generation, I sit on forecast calls all the time. We talk about revenue, talk about pipeline, talk about progression, things like that, right? when you go underneath, that's the system-based thinking. So if you think of it like an iceberg, right? Your ARR is above the water, everything else is below. So what you want to think about is, if you're in sales dev like me, you're thinking about the health of the business, top of funnel. What does that system look like? How's it working? If you're an outbound sales rep, inputs. All right, great. What are the inputs we're doing? When are we doing them? How are we doing them? To whom are we doing them? What time? And then you think, how does all of that progress through the funnel? All right, so I'm putting in 100 calls a day. What comes out of that? Okay, I get 3 conversations. 3 conversations turns into 1 meeting. 1 meeting is going to turn into 70% chance I get an S2, a stage 2 out of that, right? So that's an example of system-based thinking for pipeline generation. OKRs is another really good one. OKRs can be this really lofty wordsmith thing that is just aspirational. But any good company has to have something like an OKR, and a lot of them do. But what's really important is you have to figure out what's the work underneath that. And so for something like an OKR, I think of it this way. Your OKR is really your transformational work, right? What's underneath that is your run work. So like, how do you keep the business running? And then your improve work. What's the stuff you just need to improve? And you have to think about, what are the work streams that support that? Who are the cross-functional people you need to get that done? So to break it down really simply, you have your OKR. It's a beautiful statement, right? Everyone's like, yes, I see myself in that. Let's go. The how is the system-based thinking.
Yeah, that's great. We're going through the OKR process now with more training and a different tool to support us. And we have L1, L2, L3, like our level 1 objectives, our level 2. And then you can start to see how it all maps together and which things we can drive. So I'm a huge believer in that. And, there's 2 places I want to take the next question. And the reason I say that, we'll start at the highest level and I'll just ask it. But the second part is the specificity around the sales development function, which one of the coolest things about sales development to me is you can't always predict who the top performers will be. So there are personality things that can really drive who's going to come in and knock it out of the park. And I vividly remember when I was at a 25-person startup working for Chris Baggett, running marketing there after he had sold Exact Target. Dante Cook became one of our sellers, but he knocked on the door. He came in and was just saying, I'm targeting tech companies. I was a college football player. This is one of the companies I'd love to work at, and moved to Indianapolis. And Chris heard that and came out and was like, that's the type of mindset we need. And sure enough, Dante's gone on to do great things. So the question is, which analytical and behavioral competencies are crucial for implementing a systems-driven go-to-market framework? Which is, start there, and then you can bring it down into sales development, because there may be some differences.
Yeah, I think there are. And that's a great question. So this all sounds fine and dandy, right? Everyone's on board. They're like, yeah, okay, we got to build a system. We got to go do it. When you think about setting a goal, we're at the time of year where everybody's going to start setting goals, right? January comes along, and the most common one here is, I want to lose weight. Cool. You get super excited. You maybe buy some new clothes. You buy some new shoes. You buy some new equipment. You sign up for a gym. All the prep that goes into that is so much fun. I mean, I'm looking at my workout calendar that's right over here, and every single day of the week, I jot down what I'm doing, and then I check it off. I love that. I eat that up. The hardest part is changing your behavior. And you can apply that to anything. So have you read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Yes, that's a great one.
I'm going to steal something that he talks about, and I recommend that book. I actually reread it almost every year, not front to back, but I go back to the sections I've highlighted. And the behavioral and analytical stuff that has to change is, you really do have to analyze your environment and understand where you're going to run into friction. So if you're thinking about it at the highest level, what points in your day, what points in your system are going to introduce friction into how you're trying to accomplish this goal through a systems-based approach? He talks a lot about habit stacking. Are you familiar with that concept?
Yes. but
Okay.
you may want to cover it at a high level. I'm sure everyone hasn't read the book, but it has
Yeah.
been a recommended book on multiple episodes.
I mean, it's such an incredible book, right? So habit stacking is basically looking at your day and figuring out, what do I want to change? So if it is you want to get 10,000 steps in a day, how do you do that? What can you already tack that goal onto where that makes sense? So for me, for example, my Peloton is sitting right next to me, and I don't necessarily aim for 10K steps a day. I just want to move my body during the day. And so I have figured out, if I just want to say I want to move my body, that's not going to happen. So I figured out, okay, when in my day is the best time to do that? I know I sit down at my desk at about 7:15. You and I talked about kids are out of the house at 7. That is my time. I usually don't have meetings until 8. So I know that I can grab my laptop, put it over here on my Peloton, and just walk. You catch up with Slacks, emails, whatever it might be. You're not really having to be super involved. That's habit stacking. And then you find that in other parts of your day. So I think the really important piece that people often forget is, you have this huge goal. How do I make sure that happens in my day by eliminating friction? To answer your second question, in sales dev in particular, you talked about not exactly being able to figure out who's going to be the best, right? And it surprises you. I've certainly hired people who are absolutely incredible in the interview process. They look amazing on paper. They nail the interview. They nail the cold call. They come in and something isn't right. Or you have that person who you take a risk on and you feel it. You feel it in your bones and you're like, trust me, I know this might not look right, but it is. I think it comes down to a few things. The best reps are those who are curious. They are coachable, which everybody needs to be coachable, but gosh, that's hard sometimes. And they are able to actually assess their own process and do it. That piece is really hard in sales dev because it's a numbers game and you've got to keep moving, but you also have to take a step back and reflect and assess. But the curiosity piece is one of the most important. And if you lack curiosity, and we're thinking about this through like a goal setting process versus systems, someone who lacks curiosity is going to say, I just need to get to 10 and I'm going to get there hell or high water. Might not be quality. I might burn a hell of a lot of bridges on my way there, but I'll get there. The person with curiosity is going to do things really differently, right? They're going to figure out, like, when is the best time to call? How do I actually get to this person? What do I know about Chris that can get me to cut through the noise? How do my AEs work? How did the top performers work? That curiosity sets people apart.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, another one of my favorite getting into sales stories. It was someone who was a car salesman trying to get into tech sales. And
Yeah.
I actually met them flipping sports cards during the pandemic in a
Whoa.
Facebook group. But the curiosity point, he sent me a message. They had a family tragedy. He had kids that he was supporting by himself. And he had the motivator. He said, I want to get into tech sales. I just need a chance. I cannot make working until 8 p.m. work for my family with my new situation. If you know anyone I should talk to, please let me know. I've never missed a number. I will never miss a number. But you could see that curiosity, that will, that I can't afford to fail type
Yeah.
of mantra that you were hitting on there too. And sure enough, ended up at CrowdStrike. I had a friend there who's, look, start him as an SDR, give him a chance. Boom, boom, boom. Never missed a number, but it was the systems-based thinking, like you're talking about. It was habit stacking, and then there was this motivation, curiosity, necessity to make it work.
Yep.
Those are always my favorite stories. So when you say that, it's starting to trigger these great memories of folks who have pulled this off. What are some of the resistances that may come up as teams or individuals start to shift from goal-based to systems-based thinking?
It's always doing too much, DTM. And that is where this fails. You do have to break it down into its simplest parts. But I think what happens is people just do too much. And what happens when we do too much too fast is we get overwhelmed. So I think the other thing I think about a lot as I think about strategy, how my team works, is we have to have a win-win environment. Win-lose situations, never good. And you can apply this to, if you're an IC, like how do I set this up so I'm win-win? But I think about this a lot from like an org perspective and what are the processes we have in place that are our systems supporting our goals, and where there win-lose situations there. How do we fix that? But it's people do too much and then they get overwhelmed and we quit as humans, right? And we kind of go back to what we were originally doing that doesn't get us any further. That's usually the resistance I find in this.
Yeah. You mentioned your calendar. That's a great example because I want to ask, well, no, I don't want to. I will ask. I want to, and I will. How can organizations measure the effectiveness of their systems versus traditional goal-oriented metrics? And one of the things that came to mind was your calendar. When you have it written down, I had a friend who wanted to make a transformation in his life. He would put a big red X every day that he was physically active or worked out. And then you have this visible reminder of the days you did, the days you did not. But I'd love for you to hit on measuring effectiveness as folks make this transition.
Yeah. So if we think about it as like a go-to-market organization, it's measuring things like, I'm going to go all the way to the top of the funnel here. It is measuring things like how many minutes it takes from a lead to make it from Marketo to Salesforce. I was at a company once where that took 22 minutes. And for an inbound lead, there's all this amazing data out there, right? I'm sure you've seen it that says anything over 5 minutes, your conversion drops off a cliff. So we were taking 22 minutes before a rep even got it. That's a systems problem. So when we're talking about, when you're doing, it's budget season, right? So we're talking a lot about, hey, we're going to get X MQLs. We got to convert this many will turn into pipeline. What you're not talking about is, do we have the right systems for that? So it's taking 22 minutes for this lead to get to a rep, and that rep, let's say best case scenario, gets to it under 10 minutes. We've already decreased our chance of conversion quite a bit. So measuring pieces of the funnel in that way versus just straight MQL to SQL conversion, SQL to pipeline conversion, you have to look at what's underlying there. And I have an awesome RevOps partner. His name is Richard Wren. We've worked together at Databricks. Prior to that, he was at Salesforce, and we're at 1Password now. And I've learned so much from him in actually understanding, hey, let's break down this process. Let's understand the systems and the inputs and how things convert through the funnel, not through the funnel as like sales stages. That's important too, but through the funnel before you even create an opportunity. So that's one way to measure the effectiveness here. You're also thinking about, one of the most expensive things for a company is headcount. And you have to measure the effectiveness of that headcount. Sales dev, I'm always talking about this. How much effective headcount do we have? How effective are they in their roles? And can we increase the efficiency with which we do our job? And, you pull in tools for those types of things. Will this increase the efficiency of how we do the work? Those efficiency metrics are so much harder. Like you can't necessarily measure that on a dashboard in Salesforce, but that's how you measure the effectiveness of your systems versus just the output of a goal.
That's great. Okay, we have a couple questions here that we like to hit on every episode. One is a trending topic, and then another is an audience question. And the trending topic, this is probably a huge surprise to you. How are you using AI in sales?
Thought you'd never ask.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it.
Everyone's talking about it. I actually remember the first time I was asked this question in an interview a while ago, like years ago. And it kind of stumped me originally. It's like, how should we use AI in sales? Wow, we've certainly developed quite a bit since then. But so a few ways. Obviously, there's so many MarTech, sales tech companies out there who we invest in and we bring on as partners to help us figure out how do we work smarter here. And those are the well-known things, right? Like using tools to help you understand who's looking at your website, who's ready to buy. Those pieces are huge. I tell my team, when you sit down at your desk in the morning, what's your compass? Like, how do you know where to start? So, number one, you start with some of the biggest, it's not even tools. Tools isn't the right thing, it's a resource, right? But the other thing that is free is actually figuring out if you're a BDR, if you're a salesperson, you want to have a point of view, right? When you're calling into an account, you want to understand if I have 100 accounts, number one, where do I start? Great. There's some incredible sales tech tools out there that can help you with that. But nothing replaces a human. I really believe that. I don't think that humans will ever be replaced in sales. However, we were just talking about the efficiency of a sales rep. You have to figure out how to come up with a point of view for 100 companies fast. How do you scale that? There are free extensions, ChatGPT extensions that you can plug in, and it can read through a 10K and give you all of the information you need. Those are tools I don't see a lot of people using, and I work at, in cybersecurity, so we can't always use tools like that. But figuring out in your own process where are the pieces that you can rely on a free version of a tool to help you develop a point of view a heck of a lot faster, and then you put your flavor and your spin on it. That is really important. So that is something that we always are talking about, is like, because reps ask me all the time, well, how do I scale that? How do I build a point of view for 50 different companies? You have to be smart. You have to be using AI to help you move just a little bit faster.
Yeah, great stuff there. I totally agree with you, and especially about your point with humans. Technology is amazing, but you're still going to build relationships with people.
Yes.
And this audience question is one of my favorites I've seen in quite a few episodes.
Yeah.
What's a common myth in sales that you believe holds teams back?
Ooh, I love that. I think one of the biggest myths is that hiring managers just want to hire quota crushers. I kind of hate that term, quota crushers. Um, I think that's a big myth. And I think why it's wrong is because it misses something that's really important, which is leaders at every level of the company care about getting the job done, but they really care about doing it right. And this is where performance and behavior are equal. And I see people, either individual performers or teams, who might be hitting their number, but they're not doing it in the right way. And not doing it in the right way could mean, yeah, I'm bringing all these opportunities, but it's a drop in the bucket. Versus, let's talk about high quality pipeline. That's a really basic example. But also how you interface with your internal stakeholders, your cross functional partners. All of those things matter. And for me as a leader, integrity, like when I get hot and I'm like upset and I'm frustrated and you could see it, it's usually because there's a lack of integrity somewhere. And I think that's a myth, is I'm doing great. Like why would I ever have a conversation with my manager about my performance? I'm the top performer. Behavior matters and how you show up matters. And I think that's a myth that holds people back and holds teams back.
That's a great one. I was actually having a conversation with another dad about that last night. My 13-year-old was at a baseball workout, and there's a Brad Stevens quote: "What good is the best player on the team if he's not the best teammate?" And to your point, individual performance is individual performance, but if it's bringing everyone else down, that can certainly hold everyone back. So I think
love
that was
that.
great.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool. Well, look, we're in the lightning round now. We have a couple quick hitters.
Okay.
Insert some jazzy music. Maybe we can do a sound effect later. I need to come up with some segment that we can do consistently here. So I have a few questions for you. These are really quick. They can be punchy answers, whatever you'd like to cover here, because I know we're coming up on our time. And look in your function. I guarantee you have a jam-packed calendar, especially this time of year. So the first, what is the biggest challenge in B2B sales? If you had to pick one thing.
Complicated sales process, unclear sales process, hands down. Like this is where, when I was talking about friction in the systems and win-lose situations, you cannot have that here. And I see this a lot. There are kinks in the hose, right? And you're trying to just keep pipeline flowing through the whole thing. When you have a sales process that is unclear for the sellers, everybody's going to come up with their own opinion, right? Like, what is qualified pipeline? I don't know. Yeah, go ask, this person. They might give you another answer. Or what is the exit criteria? So when I'm talking sales process, it could be anything from sales methodology to simply exit criteria and how we progress pipeline. Time is everything in sales. And if you have a gray area, if you have a lack of clarity for your people on how to move that, when to move that slows things down, things die on the vine. And I think that's a huge problem. And that's all systems based, right? Like you have your goal. We as a company, we want to get to $1 billion in revenue. Great. Everybody can get on that train. What are the systems that need to be perfectly in tune to get us there?
Love it. What about tech recs? What are your favorite tools or technologies that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Oh, tools and technologies. Okay, I'm kind of going to go back to actually a few free things. So, tools. If you're a leader at any level, if you are an IC at any level, join some type of group so that you can get that mind share and that knowledge share outside of the four walls of your own company. I'm in a couple sales dev leader groups, be it in LinkedIn, be it in Slack, and just being able to step outside your four walls and say, anybody else have this challenge? Can you help me understand how you're comping your reps on these things to drive the right behaviors? That's not necessarily tech. That's just a tool. Go out there and talk to other people because you learn a lot that way. Tech, there are so many things to choose from. So instead of naming the actual tech, I want to talk about the pieces that you have to have. You have to have the foundation, Salesforce and Marketo, or whatever those are for your company, right? Like those aren't snazzy anymore. Those aren't the sexy tools. Those are just status quo. But man, if those are not set up right, if those are not simpatico, you got problems. And then you build everything on top of that. And so you have your sales intelligence tools. You have your sales automation tools, your intent tools, calling functionality. I mean, I used to make like 50 calls a day, maybe as an SDR. And if you have a tool like a Nooks, like an Orem, those are going to help you just double your productivity. Now, you still have to be really smart about it. You can't just be dialing to dial, right? You have to be prepared with your talk track, your point of view. And then the last thing I'm going to say on this, Chris, tools are tools. What you have to have is a really clear system on how you use those tools to support your prospecting efforts or to support your selling efforts. And what I find is so often we get all these tools, we train on them in silos. What we miss is how you use those tools to prospect with a purpose. So I kind of got on my soapbox a little bit there. Didn't really, I elaborated on your question, but tools and tech, you have to have them, but you also have to be able to help your people understand how the heck do you use these things together to be more effective.
Love it. I absolutely love that one. And look, I mean, obviously this is a podcast produced by Demandbase, but we completely agree. It's something that we've all said personally and we all say here, right? Buying the wrong tool or purchasing the right tool at the wrong time or not being ready to use it or not having adequate training. These are all reasons why technology goes poorly. And it's not going to fix all your problems, especially if you're not ready for it. So great stuff there. We close out the show with a question about good reads and good people. The first, good reads. Is there a book, blog, newsletter, or podcast that you'd recommend to our listeners? And I know you've already covered one.
Can I answer all three of those?
Of course.
Okay. Book. Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. Have you ever read this?
I have not read that one.
Okay, so
Putting it on
everybody
my
knows Shake
list.
Shack. Everybody knows Gramercy Tavern. So Danny Meyer is actually a restaurateur. However, I saw him speak at a Sales Loft conference in 2019, I think. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting to have Danny Meyer, the founder of Shake Shack, come speak to us. That is a book I read over and over again because it is all about delighting the customer. There are tips and tricks in there about hiring the right people. It's phenomenal. Danny Meyer is incredible. So highly recommend that. A newsletter. This is mostly for like leaders, managers on how to become a better version of yourself in those areas. Katie Ceccherini, she is the owner of Endurance Management, which is executive coaching, women's retreats, sales leadership, sales training. I've brought her into Databricks to run 6-week long training with my managers on effective coaching. Sign up for the free newsletter. It's fantastic. Drops every Friday morning. I mean, I screenshot the things she says in there and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So that's my answer for newsletter. Podcast. I love Grit. Have you ever listened to Grit with Jubin Mirzadegan?
Yes.
Okay. Jubin, if you're listening, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Apologies if I didn't. I love that one. That's a Kleiner Perkins podcast. And I find those conversations to just be very real. They're very authentic. So those are my three.
Great stuff. Good suggestions there. We'll be sure to include them in our write-up. And then lastly, good people. Who inspires you in the B2B space that you recommend we bring to the show?
Okay. Sam McKenna, 100%, all day, every day. I stop scrolling my LinkedIn when I see her posts, which are frequent, right? So usually every day I get a few posts from Sam. Sam McKenna from Sam Sales, hands down, and her whole team, really. I was introduced to them at a Women in Leadership conference hosted by Outreach a few years ago, and was just, I was eating up everything she was saying. And since I've brought her in and her team to help my team figure out how to craft messaging, but Sam is incredible. Trenton Truitt. So Trenton Truitt, really fantastic sales leader. One of the best that I've ever had the pleasure of working for. He's worked for amazing places and he's an incredible mentor, incredible leader, incredible salesperson. He's fantastic. And then the last person I would say is a woman I know. Her name's Anna Tipkasem, and she is in enterprise renewals at Databricks. I worked with her at New Relic. I've never met anyone who is so good at protecting the revenue of the company and balancing that with what the customer needs. I mean, when we worked at New Relic together, every sales leader was dying for her to go out to their customer meetings. And she does it with low ego. So those are my people.
10 out of 10. You stuck the landing there. Strong endorsements and very great descriptors of each person. So it almost sounded like the read up before they walk on stage. So yes. 10 out of 10. Well done on that.
What their walk-up songs would be. What's your walk-up song?
Oh, that's good. I actually know that offhand. So I love this song, North Cac by G. Yamazawa. It's a song about North Carolina. He's from Durham, North Carolina. And so there's a line, North Cac, which is for North Carolina. And it says barbecue sauce with the slaw. It's a really cool hip-hop song. It sounds good when it's on stage. There are just a few things you have to beep out. But yes, what about you?
My go-to is Let Me Blow Your Mind by Gwen Stefani and Eve.
You know? I love that. That's
got
a great beat,
what,
too.
2001, maybe?
Yeah, I could still hear, as soon as you said it, I can hear it. And I think I actually had extra speakers in my car at that time, too. Which,
nice.
Not to date us or anything, but,
right. Right.
Awesome. Well, we need to add that. What's your walk-up song? That feels like a good, consistent question that I should bring onto the podcast in 2025. Fantastic. And then the most important question of all, Kelly, how can people get in touch with you after this podcast?
LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. If you look for my LinkedIn handle, it's KFlow, which actually Trenton Truitt gave me that nickname. way back, and it stuck with me. But that's the best place to go find me.
Outstanding. Love the nickname. Everyone just calls me Moody, which is similar. It came from sports and my last name, but you crushed it.
Thank you.
Awesome job. Enjoy the rest of your year, especially with 3 girls. I know that December is a busy month.
Yes, likewise with 4. I mean, you one upped me. So yes, good luck and
It's all relative. I tell everyone that you're completely busy with a pet, you're completely busy with 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids. It doesn't matter. Things fill the time.
Yes.
Systems based. There you go.
There you go. System space. You can apply it to being a parent.
Oh yeah. I mean, we have weekly meetings on Sunday, and we've actually figured out that my 9-year-old daughter, our 9-year-old daughter, she is the best facilitator in the entire house.
I love
She
that.
runs court. It's amazing. I mean, I almost want to help develop her into a masterful workshop facilitator, which is a very lucrative industry.
Yes.
She can run a meeting as well as anyone I've ever seen. What's your favorite part of the day? You know, and then she'll go around and just call on people and be like, wait, they were not finished talking. She's really good at just reading the room, but you see that through the systems, and this is how we get through and survive.
Is she a middle child?
She's our second.
Okay, so yeah, one of the middle.
One of the middle. Yeah, we have 2 middles. Yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Really appreciate your time.
You too. Thanks so much, Chris.